Welcome in to episode 8 of the Coolbet Canada podcast. I know it's not your usual voice that you hear off the top of the show. Pat Gregoire couldn't be with us today. Greggy's on his way to call another game. He's a big shot, Chris. He's a big shot. He's in the world of the NLL. He's the man. So yeah, he's off. He's traveling right now. So I'm going to take the reins here. Chris is going to help me out, and we're going to get through the intro outro here.
Yeah, no, Pat, listen, Pat does a ton of work for us. And then I don't know if he sleeps because when he's supposed to sleep, he's on a plane going to call the NLL on TSN, which, is a passion of his as well. So it's pretty cool that he gets to do both of those things. So I guess we'll see Pat whenever he's done jet setting around Canada.
Yeah, he'll be out this week. I'll be out next week. I'm going to be, I won't be around near the end of the week, but it'll be for different reasons besides Pat's. We got a great guest on the show today. Ryan Fry joins us. We talk everything curling, Briar, kind of what the curling landscape's going to look like in the next year or so here after the Olympic year. So great conversation with him. As always, we'll cap off with we're actually not going to cap off with our weekend wagers this week. We're going to take a break from that. But we're going to start the show by talking a little bit about the Mlb Lockout. Looking like things are looking up, even though we've said that for the last couple weeks now. Chris, what was your thoughts? I know you're a big Jays season ticket holder.
Yeah.
Let's get this figured out, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're getting pretty close. I mean, it's certainly, if you look at the reporting, it certainly looks like they're pretty close together on most things. It seems that they're going to make some concessions. The latest I'm hearing is that, there's still the opportunity for a 162 game season. They might extend it a little bit. Play a couple of off days and mix in a couple of double headers. Right now, I think every team has only lost 6 games. So, I mean, that's not insane to think you can make it up. But, we've seen this a few times already. So certainly it's a don't count your eggs before they hatch situation. I'm really hopeful they can get it hammered out here before the end of this week. I think everybody is ready for it to be done. And especially with the Blue Jays, right? I mean, we're talking about Canada. They've got such a promising team here, and guys are not even in their prime yet, right? Like Vladdy and Bo Bichette and Teoscar's probably in his prime, but there's so many guys that are ready to have the next, 2, 3, 4 seasons just be outstanding for them. And I think any game that gets taken away from the fans, whether in Toronto, in Canada, or outside of it, like the Jays are at a point now where they were, back in 2015, 2016, where they're going to get attention from the US as well. When I travel to Vegas, and I know you guys like to rag on me for that, but when I talk about the Jays or I wear my Jays gear, people know the Jays. It's not like it's the Leafs. It's not like it's a hockey team where they're like, oh yeah, you guys have that up there. They're like, oh man, I love Vladdy, and it's like, Robbie Ray had such a good year last year, and you guys are Gosman now, so like they're paying attention to the Blue Jays. And I think that's great.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't help that they're in the toughest division in baseball either. It sounds like they have made a move on that playoff format, though. It sounds like we are going to get a 12-team format. I think owners wanted 14, but that does seem a little participation medalist. We're going to get 12 teams in a format. It sounds like bigger bases, and I think a pitch clock as well. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, so I think bigger bases are not a bad idea, right? It's only for safety. I've been a fast pitch softball guy my entire life. First base has always had that orange bag on the side. Like it doesn't hinder the game. The only thing is traditionalists. Oh, you can't do that. Well, it's the same thing. It's just bigger. It's safer. And especially now that we've taken, you want to eliminate the collisions and things like that, guys popping off the bag and all that. So it's only better for offense, especially as well, and safety. And then the pitch clock. So again, with softball, I mean, I've seen plenty of men's and women's world championship. Pitch clock is good. It keeps the messing around out of the game. Get in there and take a swing. I mean, we saw it at the World Baseball Classic as well. It really just becomes a part of the game that you're used to, and it speeds things along. Listen, me personally, if I go to the ballpark and it's a 4.5-hour game, do not care. Love it. Doesn't matter. But I know when you're talking TV, you're talking new viewers. People in general think the game is too long. So if that helps that along, then hey, I'm all for it. The only thing I never ever want to see, and I've seen it discussed, is dropping games to 7 innings. I would never ever get on board for that.
No, I'm not big on the 7-inning thing either. It's a 9-inning game. It's how it's always been. Like, think about the record books. It would be a mess
Wow, the record books already are a mess.
Well, yeah, well, I mean, but in terms of changing the game that much, I mean, pitch clock, I don't mind either. Like you said, I think watching the game on TV probably it gets a little harder. But even if it's on, sometimes you just throw it on in the background, like you're doing something, doing a few chores, and it's nice to have on. But yeah, when you're at the ballpark, it really doesn't matter how long. Like you plan to go to the Jays game, you're going to be at the game for however long the game goes. And if you did leave, like there was a game this year I went to. They were down, I think, 8-3 or something like that, and they end up coming back in the last 2 innings, and people were leaving. And it's like, hey, this is why you don't leave the ballpark early, because anything can happen. They came back. I think they won 9-8 in the 9th or something like that. But yeah, just stuff like that. I don't know. I think it'll, like you said, help the game more than hurt it, I'd say. But yeah, not a whole lot left by the sounds of it. I know they maybe came to terms on an international draft, which I don't know a ton about, but sounds like they can kind of push that one too if they want. And then I think some salary stuff that they had to iron out. But yeah, it looks like we are going to get a season after all. Luckily, I know I think both of us are going to be happy about that. And I'm just looking forward to see how the Jays do. I think they can make a run. Hopefully Boston kind of falls off a bit. I'm expecting the Yankees to kind of still be the Yankees, and Rays. I never know with the Rays. They've found a way the last few years here. So
yeah, it's a real tough division. The only thing that we have going for us, and I had a call earlier this week with a guy who lives in Maryland, and he's a Baltimore fan. So at least we're not the Baltimore Orioles. I mean, imagine how they feel looking at the division right now.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it is. It does suck that it's the toughest division in baseball. The Rays are always there. The Red Sox and Yankees are always going to be there. So, but there's no reason in my mind that the Blue Jays cannot win this division this year. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, and from the diamond to the ice, we're going to talk some curling here with Ryan Fry. We're going to have him on right now. We're now pleased to welcome in 2013 Brier champion, a World Championship silver medalist, and an Olympic gold medalist from Sochi 2014. Also a Coolbet Canada sponsored athlete with Team Epping and mixed doubles team with Emma Miskew. It is Ryan Fry. Welcome to the Coolbet Canada podcast, buddy.
Jake, Kris, thanks for having me, boys. It's good to be here.
It's good to have you here, bud. I mean, we live a little inside baseball. We live literally a stone's throw away from each other, just across the bridge on Queen Street between River and Broadview, if anybody knows that, in downtown Toronto. And we just haven't seen each other in a while. It's been probably a month or more now. And I mean, we might have gotten away with one with the pandemic. This might have been one thing that helped the pandemic.
Yeah, for sure. No, it was with the pandemic, and definitely our schedules have made it a little tougher to see one another. But it's comforting just to know you're across the bridge, Kris. Just to know you're right over there if I need you. It's nice to know. So.
Well, it's funny because Ryan had COVID over Christmas, and then I had a little bout with Omicron, and it was literally like, "Hey, you need something? I'll swing by." So it's good to have a good neighbor, even if you don't see him all the time.
Yeah, exactly. No, for sure. But we'll definitely have to get out sooner than later. Things are opening up now. Toronto is opening up
big time. Yeah. We got everything going here, and they're talking no masks here soon, so that'll be interesting. Ryan, I know I mentioned the Olympics off the top there. I want to talk to you about something that Kris had a little rant on about a month ago, and kind of a big stir in Canadian curling where they only walk away with one medal at the most previous Olympic there. It's wherever it was. Now I can't even think of where it was. Beijing, yeah. Walk away with one medal there. I just want to get your thoughts on kind of the state of Canadian curling. Kris went into it a few shows ago, and wasn't happy with kind of the way people were talking about Canadian curling, almost putting them down based on obviously previous performance up until this past Olympics. Yeah,
it's, if we have a couple hours here, you can get into it fully, but no, it's a tough thing to navigate when you're dealing with countries abroad that are throwing absolutely everything into one or two teams nationally. So you have those teams that are competing. They're playing out of national training centers. They're together all the time. We've seen a little bit of a shift the last two quadrennials where a lot of the teams were looking for the best players geographically, where they're going, to Newfoundland from Alberta, vice versa, and just basically crisscrossing the country to put together the best teams possible. And I think we're starting to see a little bit of a pullback on that we're not seeing the same results, just due to the fact that the teams aren't spending enough time together. I remember when, part of the growing up in the sport is, you were playing with all the guys right close to you. So you're training together, you're dreaming together, you're practicing together, all the things that that create a recipe for a very successful run. And I just think we found a little bit of a hole in what's making our teams great now. So there's going to have to be a little bit of a switch going forward as far as how the teams are training. The attention to detail and how we're practicing, building seasons and all that. I just think a little bit of complacency crept in, and now we find ourselves, a quadrennial or two away from producing those top teams to be able to get those top results in the big international events.
That's a really interesting point that I hadn't even considered. It's one thing, it's not a video game, right? It's like when you play NHL 2022 and you get all the best players and you throw them on the roster, then you've got the best team. Even when you put together these great teams from Canada, like you said, if guys are living across the country and you've got imports and whatever, you're not spending that time. I think that's an excellent point, and that's not one that I've even heard discussed throughout all this. You hear we should take the best player at each position and this and that, but the actual team building part of it is huge. And I think we probably saw that a little bit in the mixed doubles too with Rachel and John, right? They just didn't have a chance to play a season, and now go to the Olympics. It's not that easy.
No, it definitely isn't. And especially when you start, like I remember back, this is 2014 is going back a little far now. I'm not too happy with that date, but you go back and you start remembering, all the pressure that started mounting when we won. And I do feel like I did listen to that, and I do feel that you're right in the sense that teams need to have longer to prepare. We need to name our Olympic teams much sooner than we are. Rachel and John, I believe, were quarantined over Christmas, and basically, aside from a few tournaments they played together, they basically just had to try and pick up, in the Rocky Mountains and then fly over to Beijing and win a gold medal. It's extremely difficult when you have teams that are training and knowing that they're that Olympic rep over the course of 9 to 12 months. So I do think that there is a little bit of a adjustment that needs to happen there as far as when we name our Olympic representative and how much time they have. And then when that happens, then you can start focusing that energy on the number 2 and number 3 team in Canada, number 4 team in Canada, where you're starting to give other teams opportunities that, may not have been available to them. So there's a little bit of an overhaul, I think, that needs to happen within the confines of Curling Canada. But that's our organizing body, and hopefully over the course of the next 4 years, the athletes are able to get a little more of a voice. And we have some pretty intelligent individuals that compete on the players' side. That it would be really nice that if we could put a voice together and have a seat at the table and give some input into where we think the sport needs to go and some of the things that we feel need to be addressed in order to be at our best, then I think that that's going to create a little bit of a solution for everyone involved. But until you have that seat at the table, it's tough to make change, and it's tough to get your opinion across.
So most other sports have a player advisory committee or something like that. That doesn't exist currently within the national organization. Is that correct? It's just kind of board members and staff making these decisions?
Yeah, it's part of basically Curling Canada as an organization has free reign as far as the way they set up our seasons and how we address our training and all that. But more the fact of just when policy and guidelines and all that are being put together, it would be nice to have a seat at the table as far as the representation from the players in order to hopefully help, guide this ship in the right direction. Because as of this point in time, we're not very successful. We haven't been very successful since 2014, and sometimes when that happens, there has to be change, and in order to do that, there has to be new people and new opinions and new voices to try and give that sort of direction.
Yeah, and we got the Briar on right now, and we haven't really got into it just yet, but I'm wondering, in terms of the tournament now, what goes on kind of behind the scenes? I haven't been to a curling tournament myself. So what's it like? I want to know kind of on the ice. Is there a competitiveness? Well, obviously there's competitiveness, but is there any sort of like trash talking? Are there certain guys that have something to say? I'm just curious because I haven't had a chance to go to a tournament like this. Kris, I know, has. I'm just wondering what it's like. And then off the ice as well, is it kind of just like, all right, we're enemies on the ice, friends off the ice, or is there actually some rivalries kind of within the sport?
There's definitely rivalries, but for the most part, it's like when you're going to these tournaments, it's like hanging out with a group of your buddies. There's obviously when you're in the sport, as long as some of us have been, you've butted heads with pretty much everyone down the line. So it depends how long people's memories are for that type of stuff. But there's definitely some fun, back and forth, especially when you're starting to see the abilities of these players now. Like you're starting to watch this Briar, and this is the first one that I've missed in quite a while, and you start really looking at the talent that Curling Canada or Canadian curling has, and it's phenomenal. Like some of the shots that are being made, called, the thinking 3, 4, 5 shots into an end. So when you start seeing all these shots being made, you can start seeing the smiles on people's faces. They're basically like, holy shit, we're good. And then you have the confidence to start, going with a little bit of back and forth. And that's always fun. I think Dunstone and Cooey were playing in a game this week that the shots they were making were ridiculous. And you started seeing that back and forth, like, anything you can do, I can do better type thing. And I think that's definitely there. Behind the scenes, it's pretty serious. It's way more serious than it used to be. There used to be a lot more fun, a lot more camaraderie, a lot more hanging out. But with the carrot of the Olympics there now, it's the seriousness of the sport is developed, and that's only good for curling.
I want to talk a little bit about the seriousness of the Olympics and what that means kind of every 4 years. But, you alluded to the fact that this is the first Briar that you haven't played in quite some time. I know that you and I had spoken earlier in the year, and you said, it sucks that the curling calendar hasn't been what I'm used to, but to take the positive out of it, which you're one of the most positive people I know. I don't know if people know that. You always see the good side of things. You said it's given you time to like reflect and see that there's more to life than curling.
For sure.
But this week, it's got to sting, man. How you doing?
Oh yeah, it definitely. I went back and forth like a thing. I'm like, shit, I'm not gonna watch it. And then I find myself checking the times. I'm like, okay, what times? Who's on? Okay, I'm gonna watch that game. Do some scouting, check it out. But yeah, it obviously stings. Just not having a chance to compete and win the Briar. But it is what it is, man. It gives you a little perspective, and you're not gonna roll through every year, and teams are getting good. Like we played Scott Howard in the final. Glenn was out with a bit of an injury, and they played phenomenal. Like there's no way it wouldn't matter who they were playing at that point in time. If they played that well, they were probably going to win. And we're in a system that you have to be at your best to beat these teams. So it stings, but it's also fun, kind of taking a step back and readjusting some priorities, and preparing for other parts of life, which you don't seem to do. And in a normal season, because, you know, before you blink, it's May, and then the next season starts in end of August. So you've got only 4 months before the season starts, and usually you're at your worst shape at the end of the season. So you have to spend those 4 months getting back in shape. But no, it is what it is. I'll keep watching it. Betting, making a few bets doesn't hurt.
Not being a part of the event opens up that part of it as well. But you talked about the Olympics and how everything's gotten more serious with the top teams who are looking to win that Olympic bid, and we've seen a lot over the years of, you know, it used to be curling teams were together, you know, and that was the team, like, you know, for a long time. We're seeing a lot more change, and there appears to be at least reportedly, and you know, you know better than anyone in the you know, amongst the rosters, that there could be a lot of change upcoming with every team. I think I heard Kevin Martin say that he didn't expect a single team to look the same when you guys start again in the fall, which is pretty. That's pretty serious.
That's dramatic.
Stuff.
It's very dramatic. Does it suck that I haven't heard anything yet? I might be calling you for a job.
Usually the last one to know. I'm sure you know, whatever happens anywhere. But tell me a bit about that, because, you know, we hear about it. Obviously, you guys aren't full-time professional athletes. You know, your contracts can't be traded. You're in a bit of a unique spot. We've seen it work for teams, but we've also seen it backfire on teams making changes. So how does it all work? When does it start happening? When do these conversations begin to happen? I just give us a glimpse behind the curtain to this whole process of teams just changing every year, because it really is unique to your sport.
Yeah, the quadrennial creates a pretty big, you know, it creates a timeline. So there's 2 years. The last 2 years of any quadrennial are the most important 2 years. The first year of a quadrennial seems to be rearranging and trying to find a combination that fits. If that doesn't fit, then there could be other opportunities that arise. So as far as when teams start talking, I'm sure a lot of the guys out there are talking real early. Once they have a definitive decision that they're not going to be playing with their current lineup. It's building a team now is so much more work than I guess it ever is, with the amount of money that it costs to run a curling team. Our expenses are just astronomical, you know, and you know, with inflation and everything that's been kicking in now, those continue to go up, and prize purses continue to stay relatively the same. So when you're building a team, you're obviously trying to build your best position. So it usually starts with who's going to skip your team, and then you start filling in. One or two players start filling in there, and then you start working, and then you start assigning all the tasks that need to be done, as far as who's going to book travel, who's going to manage the team, who's going to solicit sponsorship and all that. So it's not an easy feat, but the fact is we're really only dealing with, you know, at the very most 20 players, in my opinion. So 20 players in Canada that, you know, have been mismatched and mambled all together and have created all the different teams. And, you know, I start looking, you know, at those list of players, and I've played with the majority of them now. So it's getting to a point where you're trying to see what personalities fit, and, you know, as people grow and mature and have families and that, well, then their priorities kind of change. So you're looking for 4 guys or 3 other guys that kind of fit your place in life, and, you know, you're going to enjoy all that travel time and downtime in hotels, and yeah, it's definitely a tough process of putting together the teams. But as far as this quadrennial going, I think that there's a few key players out there that, depending on what they do and the shift that they make, which is, you know, a Cooey, a Brad Jacobs, you know, Mike McEwen, a few of the top skips out there, you know, Brendan Botcher, whatever they start filling their teams teams in with, you'll start seeing players start coming off the shelf. And as soon as that is, then the next team is going to be a team that fills in with the next best players, and then the next best players in everyone's opinion, right? So you could see a monumental shift, but if certain teams stay intact, you won't either. And the winner of this Brier is going to be a perfect example. Whoever wins this Brier likely, for the most part, will stay pretty close to what they are. A player might switch in and out, but it's, for the most part, I would have to assume that this Brier is going to have a big play in what happens.
And is it on the skip and the skip alone to do this? Is there like, because I hate to feel like there's like, you know, three guys being like, we gotta get rid of this one guy. Like, I feel like it's a real tough dynamic because, like you said, it's very personal, right? The relationships that you guys have, all the time you spend together, you know, and somebody on the team is making the decisions. It would be like if Austin Matthews decided, Jake Muzzin, you got to go. Like that's got to be tough because it's a locker room dynamic, but also a coach or GM dynamic as well.
There's the strong personalities in curling. Like there's guys that not necessarily are skipping that are part of spearheading the initiative of teams changing and building a team. And that doesn't matter on skip. The one hard part is why you don't see a lot of new skips coming into the game is, and there's definitely players out there that could skip if they chose to. But over time, you build a reputation and you build a business around that one person's name. So it's easier, say for you to sell sponsoring a team upwards when there's a reputation behind it. If, you know, all of a sudden Ryan Fry goes and starts skipping, and I hate using myself in the third person, sorry about that. If I go and choose to skip a team, it's a difficult task to convince sponsorship to come on board because you haven't proven yourself yet, and everyone wants somebody who's proven themselves before they start backing it. And that's where I think it's been, and that's why I think a lot of the top skips stay top skips, because they need that reputation.
Didn't the World Tour one year try and do that, like have teams with like team names rather than the guy? Didn't that happen?
They did, yeah. They've tried stuff all along the lines. I think going back a long time ago, like this is into the 90s, there was a guy named Mlb Bondarchuk who had a self-proclaimed had some cash, and he ended up sponsoring a team to just play on tour. And I think they played out of Anaheim, and I think they called themselves the Anaheim Earthquake or something like that. I think Dale Duguid was on the team, and there's a few guys, and a few teams like that started forming, but it never really caught on. It's there's no professional tour in curling yet to warrant having that. But I'm a big advocate. I'm a big believer that if you're with a title sponsor that's kicking in enough bucks to help you try and realize a dream, I'm perfectly fine. And I've been a part of teams that have, you know, called themselves or named themselves after that title sponsor. It's just, yeah, you need to, there's not, like other sports, there's just not one guy that comes on and says, blank check, here you go, play. But you have to make sure you're looking out for the rest of your partners too. But yeah,
I'd check out the Anaheim Earthquake. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm interested in all this because, so what I'm assuming, like when you're building this team, say when that time comes, you're all building it towards a 4-year goal of being that Olympic team for Canada. Is that right? Or is there something more to kind of building a chemistry, winning tournaments within Canada or internationally, and then hopefully you end up being that team? Like when you are building these teams, how does it all kind of, what's the main goal in the end, I'd say?
Your main goal is definitely to put together 4 guys that are all like-minded in their pursuit of excellence. That's as simply as I can put it. You're looking for guys that are dedicated to the training, that are dedicated to the process, that we all know what it takes to be successful in the sport of curling. It's the same rules that take to be successful in life as in general, is you have to put in the work, and the harder you work, the better the results end up being. So there is a push now to just build championship teams. So to have the best team. So when you go into an event, whether it's a Grand Slam of curling, a regular tour event, provincial slams, all or Briar, international events, you're going into it thinking you have a realistic expectation of winning. And when you are on a team that doesn't have a realistic expectation of winning, that's when you start seeing changes. And it's not a hidden secret. Results speak for themselves. It's if you're a championship team, you win. Gushue is a championship team. He wins on a regular basis. Jacobs is a championship team. They win on a regular basis. If you're outside looking in, you have to put together a team that, when on paper and that feeling that motivates you to be at your best, you have to have that, or else it's just especially in this day and age, you're just wasting your time globetrotting from tournament to tournament, because it's not like any of us are getting rich off of curling. It is a sport that is contrived from love. It's hard to go in there and earn a lot of money unless you're winning tournaments.
You mentioned the two Brads, and we saw them play, obviously, for the right to go to the Olympics. You've played with both of those guys. They've both been at the top of the game for a really long time. What is it about those two guys that sets them apart from the other teams?
Work ethic. It's the work ethic. When I played with Brad Gushue, he was just coming into his own. He had a lot of ideas that the ideas on the amount of effort you had to put forward in practice and training. It took me a while to catch up to that, because I didn't go into, I kind of left Manitoba to go play with Brad, and it was like my eyes were wide open as far as, just going to Newfoundland and enjoying all that Newfoundland had to offer, which was quite a bit. He really concreted the amount of effort that needed to be given. And you still saw him struggle for years after I went and started playing with Brad Jacobs. I took a lot of the stuff I learned from Brad and tried to implement it into my own game, and try to, imprint some of that knowledge onto Brad Jacobs. Then Brad Jacobs goes ahead and takes that to his own level, and starts developing, rules and guidelines for his team that, where the training and the mental, strength and all that has to come to. And that's basically where it is. And that's the one thing that, I've really enjoyed in my career, and I think helped me build into a better player, better person overall, is just you're taking so much good out of, a lot of the guys that I've played with. But to answer your question simply, they just work harder than most teams.
And I'm interested about kind of the training, like you said, and working harder and stuff. What's that kind of like on in season, obviously, like on a day-to-day basis? How often are you on the ice? How often are you practicing? Are you doing your training, stuff like that? Like, what's it like during the season?
Yeah, this has been a tough one with as far as COVID is concerned, just because over the last, like for our team, it was hard to create those guidelines, just because we didn't know what was going to be open. But to be very successful in curling, you have to be on the ice 5 to 6 times a week. You got to be in the gym 5 to 6 times a week, and you probably have to be working on the mental aspect as well down the line. And I don't think a ton of teams do that yet. I think that everyone kind of sprinkles a little bit of it into their training program. But it's substantial. It's a substantial amount of time to be at your best, for sure.
And I'm wondering, I'm kind of jumping all over the place here, but
no worries.
When it comes to an Olympic year, how many teams, because you talked about obviously some of the big names, how many teams, and I know there was 9 at the trials this year, how many teams actually have a realistic shot of going to the Olympics in an Olympic year, leading up to it, let's say, leading up to those trials?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's hard. When we won, we were seeded last out of all the teams at the trials. That being said, we didn't believe we should be seeded last. Realistically, if there's 9 teams, I'd say 5 have a relatively good shot. In a Briar with 18 teams, it's probably the same amount. 5 to 6 teams have a realistic shot at winning. But certain teams' ceilings are higher than other teams. And the 2 mentioned before, Kris, those are 2. Their ceiling for performance is just higher than the rest of us.
I'd argue that their floor is higher too.
Yeah,
I think in Saskatoon, Brad Gushue didn't play his best in the first half of the week, but he got there, right?
Yeah.
Some teams that would sink them if they weren't their best, right?
For sure, absolutely. Their range of performance is in between that 85 and 95% as a team. And the teams that are not mentioned in those top 5, top 6, their floor could be in the low 70s on games, and that's when you just get boat raced by teams like Gushue and Jacobs.
But I mean, I think you made a good point. You said you guys were ranked last. The year that Gushue won with Russ Howard, they were not expected to do anything in Halifax that year. Certainly not expected to win. They were, would have competed, but they were super young. And even this year, I think it was we got what we expected in the final 2 or 3, but it could have went either way. And I think that brings it around to the conversation we've had about training in Canada versus what the other countries are doing. Like, if you went to the Scottish Olympic qualifier, if they even had one, they just name their team, don't they? There's only one team. Yeah.
I think they just their program is smart in the fact that in Canada, we have a lot of curlers. We have a lot of high performance athletes that right now we don't have a ton of structure. So whereas Scotland has a ton of high performance athletes too, but they have a ton of structure. Their structure basically is pyramided down. The majority of resources go to their top team, then to their next team, and then to their next team after that. And they're developing. So when Moet is done curling, there's somebody there to take his place as the next team. We can't necessarily do that in Canada because there is too many good players, but there is a perfect system. We just don't have it yet. Once that system is developed and we're looking after our Matt Dunstones and Tardys and those guys in our landscape. Once you're starting to look at those guys, then we have a realistic shot in 2026, 2030 of getting back on top of the sport. But this is a rebuild, man. We're in a rebuild.
You just said 2030. Aren't we supposed to have jetpacks and all that by then?
Yeah. Who knows?
Man, we're old.
Yeah.
Hey, easy.
You're not, Jake. You're not.
Was that a royal we?
Yeah.
Not ready to be old yet, Kris. I'm not ready.
You're not, buddy. You got the best years ahead of you.
Yeah. The next best year ahead of you is always your next one, buddy. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I love that. That's good life advice to go by. We talked a little about the Briar, and you said you weren't going to watch, and then obviously you have had a chance to watch. Were there any surprises to you? I know we've seen a lot of the usual suspects, I'd say, atop the standings there, but were there any surprises, anything that stood out to you as we kind of enter the final day of pool play here?
Not really, and you guys would know as far as things are going as on the betting side of it. It's been pretty much exactly how you would expect it to go to this point. Once you get through the playoffs, though, the way this format is, where the winner of each pool is at a distinct advantage. I think you're on your. I haven't looked specifically at the rules because I haven't been a part of this one, but I'm pretty sure you're on your face right from the get go in the playoffs if you're not one of those top pool winners. So that makes it very difficult. So you'll start seeing the tie tighten a little bit on performance. A little when you're playing one and done, it becomes, the pressure mounts a little bit more. You feel misses a little bit more. So I think after tonight's draw and we get into the playoffs, you'll start seeing, you could see some upsets down those lines. Like if Jacobs happens to be in that playoff game and he's playing a hot Jason Gunnelson, there's potential to lose that game. There's definitely going to be some potential in those early rounds of the Brier playoff.
As we speak right now, Gunnelson is in an extra end with Brad Gushue. So he's been hanging around this week, man. And I think even for me, who I'm like an average curling viewer, I thought in Saskatoon, Gunnelson was kind of living up to that kind of reputation of being like a high risk, high reward kind of player. Yeah. I feel like there's been a maturity in his team's game just since then.
For sure. Jason, I grew up in Manitoba, and, Jason is a few years younger than me, but he was always a very high energy, high talented individual, and that's stayed the same. I think one of the big changes that team's seen is another guy that I curled with for a season or two is Adam Casey. Adam Casey has been, he's been phenomenal, and he's been phenomenal for, a while. Like sometimes in curling, it takes a lot of tournaments to gain the respect of the players, and he definitely has mine now. Like he's been throwing up some crazy numbers for a year and a half now, and that's no fluke. That's obviously a commitment to getting better, and he's done that. So I would, as much as Jason is definitely matured and becoming more of a version of himself that is gonna gain results, I do think Adam has a huge part to play in how well he's taken up this position and what he's been able to do on the ice.
That's come through, I think, the Adam Casey piece as well. And the other team, I guess, that people are getting a little more exposure to this week is Colton Flash's team, who's had some success. What's your assessment of those guys?
Yeah, they're a good team. Flash is, I think Flash struggled a little bit under that Cooey umbrella. It's not easy as a young guy jumping in with veterans, and the personalities there are all strong personalities, Colton included. But he's definitely finding a place for himself at skip. He was playing so well at skip before he got recruited to Cooey's team, and that's why he got recruited to Cooey's team. So now he's kind of taken a step back into the role of skip, and you can tell that's where he wants to play. I think he's pretty hard on himself. He's pretty high strung as far as not cracking a smile, not like staying very much in the moment, very focused, and that's working for him. So who am I to judge? But I would like to see him personally just enjoy what he's doing, because being a skip of a top team in Canada is a pretty special thing. So but I do think that his team's developing nicely. Catlin and the two twins are, they're high performance athletes. They're great players.
So I'm the one jumping around now, but what you were just saying spurred a question in my head that may or may not be fair to ask you, and you can choose to decline to answer it. But if Ryan Fry did have the curling 2022 video game, and you were able to have a free agent draft and pick the very best team to go on and beat everybody in the world, we'll say Canadian curlers only, what would be the very best skilled position player at each position?
It's a good question. I would have to say it's a toss-up between, Brad's can be Brad A or Brad B. A few guys call it the BBIC, the breast Brad in curling, every time they match up. But I'd say those guys would be 1 and 2 as far as performance. Mark Nichols and Mark Kennedy again I would give the edge to Mark Nichols just because Kennedy stole my spot. So So take that. Second stones. There's a lot of good seconds out there. Brett Gallant's obviously right in the mix there. There's a lot of. I would have to put Brett Gallant in that mix, and then Jeff Walker, Ben Hebert in that mix. So there's probably a position A and a position B in 8 top players in Canada, and you can flip the switch. Whether teams are willing to do what it takes to put those teams together, like if Brad Jacobs goes and takes Mark Kennedy and plays with Brett Gallant and Ben Hebert out of Alberta, well, there's a pretty damn good team. Whether he's going to, sacrifice the amount of time it takes to be a player that plays out of a different province, that's a different story. Like, this is where the storylines of these teams become compelling, because there's teams that could form that are putting their best teams forward, and not only are you playing, but you're playing out of different province to be able to compete if the rules and guidelines stay the same.
Very interesting.
As far as residential, yeah.
I don't know if you realize that you did this, but you did list the entire Gushu roster as potentially the best team that we could have.
I know it's hard, but it's definitely they've proven themselves, and I would love to be putting myself on that list, but I know the amount of summer and the amount of work it's going to take for me to get there for next year. And hopefully if we're having this conversation next year, I'll just 100% put my hand up. If it was a few years ago, I would be like pointing at myself the entire time, but I can't really do that. I got to keep this somewhat honest in here.
Well, we've talked a lot about curling, and you mentioned the summer, and I know you're always up to something. And recently you've purchased a property just inside the Quebec border that you're gonna renovate this summer. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, no, it doesn't need renovation. So me and my wife Jess were just getting, COVID started hitting us a little bit, and Toronto starts feeling like it can close in on you, especially when there's nothing going on in the city. So we were just looking at some options, and the Airbnb idea really struck home. So we ended up buying a cottage on the lake, a little 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom that it needs a little bit of it. The guy who built it took it to about 90%. So we get to go in there and put in the finishing touches, and then we're gonna Airbnb it over the course of the year and have a place that we can all go and have some good times at. And it's going to be nice to be able to bring family and friends and have some really good quality time is kind of what we were thinking is going to be the fun part about it. It's instead of seeing you for a night, you're forced to spend a few days with me. Get people in there. You can't get out.
Well, your dogs are a good attraction too. But this is not like the first time. Like, you've always had an interest in houses and real estate and doing things like that. I don't even know the right way to phrase it. Like, I won't say like renovating, because that's not exactly what it is. We've always taken an interest in that side of things.
I have an interest in trying to make money. That's a pretty high interest for me. But yeah, no, it's I try to keep. The hard thing with curling, especially when you're coming off of somebody, I've done it my whole life, and it's been my life for so long. So I'm always just trying to fit in little side hustles. And when you add, my wife Jess, she's as motivated as they come. And I can't exactly be sitting around twiddling my thumbs when she's running 3 or 4 side hustles and a full-time job. And so we come up with some pretty good ideas together, and it's really fun just to try and build something out that we're doing together. And it's something that can hopefully subsidize some income if things break and I do decide that we're going to keep curling, and I'm going to put that commitment in. It kind of frees you up to be able to do the sport and not have as much pressure on making the money from the sport. So you need something. Most people do that through getting a very strong education and building a career. I kind of did it the opposite way, but we'll see. We're looking forward to it. I think we move out on Friday, and then it's going to be 3 months of getting the place set up, and then we'll have a place for Airbnb on the market. It'll be fun.
That is cool. Well, you alluded to something there that is not talked about often either. Like you guys, like you said, globetrotting to play every weekend, and the tournaments start like Wednesday night or Thursday, and no employer in their right mind is going to allow their employees to take off, every week. So you really do have to have that flexibility built in. Are there curlers out there that you think and that you've played against that you think could be top line curlers that just because of their day-to-day life aren't at the top of the game?
It's hard to know because I only really get to know a lot of the guys that are on tour, and most of those guys set their lives up accordingly. And if you can't set it up, then you don't end up being in that elite level because the commitment is I think far greater than what the average person understands. We're responsible for building the team, managing the team, building the business side of the team, booking all of our hotel accommodations, and coordinating that with usually 3 guys that live in different places across Canada. So there's a lot of work that goes into building a team, and it's a lot of effort has to be put in personally to be able to set yourself up to be able to be one of those guys who can do that. So it is a difficult task. Like you look at a guy like, again, bringing it back to a guy like Adam Casey, the guy they play as much as anyone on tour, and he's doing that out of PEI, and he's an engineer. So within the amount of juggling he must have to do to hold his job, his family, and the curling career, it's more than a full-time job. And then on the women's side, you add in the having babies and having to manage the family and everything. It's mind-blowing how much effort goes into it. I talked to Emma and I talked to Rachel a bit, and I started getting a little more of an understanding of how much the women's teams go through to be able to compete at such a high level, and it actually makes the men's side of it seem easy. So it's a pretty big commitment, but one that it's very rewarding when you win.
Well, yeah, I mean, anyone who has kids knows that if something goes wrong, they don't go looking for dad. It's I want mom. Whether mom's throwing final stones in the 10th end, that don't matter.
Yeah, no, 100%. And then it's phenomenal to me, and all the power to all the ladies out there who take that on, because it is a massive commitment on the men's side, and it's tenfold on the women's side.
And Ryan, I mean, we were on talk of personal life and stuff like that. I'm curious, when you do get a chance to kind of unwind off season, I know it's not a long time like we talked about earlier, but what do you like to do? Obviously you talked about the Airbnb and stuff. What do you like to do hobby wise? I'm just curious.
I like to golf, go out, have a few drinks, not too many though, that can get you into trouble. I like hanging out with my buddies, like we go golfing, like traveling, and then it's always with having such a rock star wife, we spend a lot of time trying to come up with different ideas to make our lives a little bit easier and a little more fun. And that's I think that's the key to anything, is you're trying to make the short time you've got as enjoyable as possible.
Yeah, I'd say Jess's resume probably is 8 or 9 pages long at this point with all the things that she does.
For sure, and that makes up for my half a page. So it's good. It's good.
Ryan Fry at curling.ca.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I listed a couple off the top there. Olympic gold medalist, world champion silver medalist. Hey,
yeah, for sure.
Hey,
you got to get the 2020 in there somewhere. You got to get this decade in there. So.
Got to do something since Jake's gotten out of high school. That's
exactly. Yeah. I think I went and spoke at your school in 2014. You were about 12.
Honestly, it's possible.
Yeah. No, that's good, boys.
I don't know, Kris. I don't have anything else. What about you?
I mean, I can shoot the shit with Fry
Yeah,
all day, but we've probably taken up enough of his time. But we usually let everyone finish Fry with just, where to find them online, what they're doing, anything you're passionate about, if there's anything that we can promote for you.
Yeah, no, there's nothing really. We promote what we need to promote, but obviously we want to thank, on behalf of Team Epping, we want to thank both you guys. Having you guys in our corner has made, obviously COVID, but has made, struggling through and grinding through this last couple of seasons, that much more enjoyable, just knowing that we had the support of you guys. So aces to you guys. And other than that, yeah, hopefully we'll see you on the podcast with some more news going forward.
Well, and then also you guys are going to be playing in Toronto soon too, right? So people here can go out and see you guys.
Absolutely. Yeah. The Players Championship, I believe it runs, mid-April. Check the dates there. I think it starts in the 10th, 11th, 12th, something in there at the Mattamy Center, downtown Toronto. It's a great event. It's a calendar event for the Grand Slam of curling. So if you are around, definitely come out. The sport can use everyone's support and it's a blast going out there. And I'm sure if they're looking for someone to party with, you'll be in that Pinty's Lounge.
Yes, absolutely. I've already blacked out my calendar for those days, and who knows, we might even give away some tickets to some cool bettors out there.
Right on, buddy. Well, thanks, boys. Thanks for having me, and have a good little end of the winter season here, and let's get summer going.
Let's drop those masks. Let's have some fun.
Yeah, let's do it. Boys. Let's do it. Thanks a lot, Ryan.
Thanks for the time.
Okay, buddy.
I want to thank Ryan Fry for jumping on the Coolbet Canada podcast with us. Great conversation with Ryan. Super interesting guy. I don't know a whole ton about him, but Kris, what did you think about the whole conversation?
Yeah, I mean, we could have went for hours with him. He's a very insightful guy. He's obviously got just a wealth of curling knowledge and experience, and we only got to talk about part of it. I've known Ryan for a long time. I think it was 2007 when I met him. He was in St. John's, actually where I am now. I'm at my parents' place. So if anyone's watching on YouTube, you can see that I'm clearly in an old house in the basement in the fun room. We've got the old encyclopedias there. But yeah, so Ryan was really tight friends with a friend of mine named Ryan LeDrew, and we met way back when, and then kind of reconnected with the Team Epping and Coolbet stuff. So known him a long time. He's been through the ringer in this sport, man. He's had the highest highs, he's had the lowest lows, and he's somebody that I think when you watch him on TV, he's always so dialed in, so competitive, and he's hard on himself when he misses a shot or whatever. And I think it was good to get a little bit of him just kind of out of the element and just to enjoy him a little bit. So he's great, and I'm sure we'll have him on again.
Yeah, the insight was amazing, and for someone is still early in their curling viewership life, there's a lot of good stuff that I didn't know. Even a new word, quadrennial, never heard that word before, but must be a big curling thing. I imagine it's just like a 4-year period, but when he said it, it just sounded so much better than just like, the 4-year span or whatever. Exactly. Kept saying quadrennial. I'm like, this is a cool word. I'm gonna.
Yeah, so I saw you Googling it there. Yeah.
No, I kind of like understood what he was saying. Olympics every 4 years, quadrennial. I get it. Something like that.
Yeah. Instead of saying the Olympic cycle or whatever, but yeah. It's like I said when we were chatting with them, the whole thing is really interesting, right? Because they're not professionals, they're semi-professional. They get paid, they have sponsors, there's purses at the event, but I mean, they're not on contract with anyone. Like, they're not guaranteed anything. Like you said, like they have to go out and hustle up their own sponsorships and things like that as a team. Not many of these teams have like business managers or anything like that. So it's a real unique dynamic, and to be around it as long as he has is pretty impressive. Yeah,
it's a hustler sport by the sounds of it. And yeah, like you said, getting more into it, it's super interesting. But from one ice surface to another, I think we got to talk a little Leafs to cap off our show here. We're not going to do weekend wagers. I mentioned off the top, but yeah, we got to talk a little Leafs. Kind of messy. I don't know if you saw my tweet about their last 10 the other night. it's getting messy with these comebacks. They get up early, and then of course I'm just getting flashbacks here, Kris. Like I don't know what's going on with this team. Like, from your insight, like what are your thoughts? 'Cause I know you watch a ton of hockey. Obviously, you've watched some Leafs. Like, what are your thoughts just in the last 10 games? Let's say.
Yeah, we'll park the weekend wagers because we're recording this a little early and there's no lines out. But listen, yeah, it's become fun to watch the Leafs, almost as fun as watching your Twitter account. I just kind of let you go because there's no sense jumping in because I see myself in you. I've been that guy numerous times. But yeah, it's I don't know, like they're 9-10 goals a game, 17 goals a couple of weeks ago. It's fun to watch, but that won't sustain in the playoffs, right? So what I do see is certainly defensive zone. That is a bit of a gong show. Certainly they have not had the consistent goaltending. I don't think it's all on the goaltenders. I think they've faced a lot of tough chances. I'll have to consult with my analytics friends to see the high danger chances against. But if you talk about the fun part and the goals that Austin Matthews is scoring, and JT had a beauty on the partial breakaway there the other night. Fun team to watch, but I still have many reserves about how they'll make out come playoff time.
Yeah, fun team to watch, but this is the regular season, and then these playoff games aren't fun to watch when they're up 3-0 or 3-1 the other night to a Seattle team that you should just crush if you're the top of the table like the Leafs are. I don't know. It's getting me nervous. I want to talk about because we got the trade deadline. It's got to be coming here soon, and there's a lot of speculation. Of course, a lot of it's fan speculation. But I don't know. What do you think the biggest need is? Because now we see Jack Campbell's going to be out 2 weeks, and goalie is talked about with it amongst the group. I think it's a defenseman. I think it's a 1-2 defenseman. I think that's what they need, especially shutdown guy. That's why I'm not sure about Chychrun. I know everyone's big on Chychrun. And then I see people even talking forward, JT Miller. I don't know if that's quite their need. I think Robertson filled in nice in that top 6 role. What are your thoughts on the trade situation? What do they need? What's their biggest need?
Yeah, they need 2 or 3 more TJ Brodies, right?
Yeah.
You don't notice TJ Brody from any bad things. At least I don't anyway. He always seems to just be contributing, be solid. Morgan Riley's he's a special kind of different defenseman, right? But he's certainly not your shutdown guy. And they don't just come easily. Like, it's not easy to go out and find a Darnell Nurse who, by the way, when I was betting the Oilers Caps game the other night, I found out that he's not getting much power play time anymore. He was out, but he was matched up against Ovechkin every shift. So, it's hard to find that big, lanky, smooth skating, shutdown defenseman. There's not many of them out there, but the Leafs have a little too many of the same guy right now on the blue line. So I do think that, that's a pressing need, but I know it's not one that's easy to come by. If they go out and get another, smallish puck moving defenseman, then I'm just, I throw my hands up because you're going to be a President's Trophy contender every single season. And that's going to be it. So when it comes to the forward group, man, I like the forward group. I like the Wayne Train in the bottom 6. I like what Jason Spezza brings in the bottom 6. I think a guy like Kyle Clifford is a good extra guy to have around, especially if you come up in a series. But, until they find a way to beat the Calgarys of the world, to beat the Vegases of the world, these big kind of strong lean on you teams who are also fast and also have other elements. I just think it's going to be tough for them, man. Like, I just don't know. Like, you can't just go out and find a Victor Hedman, but they don't have that identity on their blue line. They aren't hard to play against in their own end, from what I've seen. So that could change. I doubt it. It's not like it's a switch you can flip. But that's just what I see with this team. And also, we also have the fallacy of watching them too closely, and maybe there's plenty of other teams with the same issues around the league. But I'm just, if I'm coaching that team and I'm watching the video every night, I'm just like, it's the same thing. and I know how this story ends because it's been this way here for a while. And the last thing, not holding the leads, that's certainly concerning. It shows me that there's an element of taking the foot off the gas and getting fat and happy, which that's not that killer instinct, right? You look at the Florida Panthers, they don't stop when they're up 3-0. They make it 6-0. So that's kind of the difference there.
Well, they don't stop when they're down 3-0 either. They're the comeback team of the year. Every night we see them having 2-goal comebacks or a late goal to push it to overtime, stuff like that. That's what's got them so high in the standings. Are you a believer in Jack Campbell? There's a lot of talk about maybe going and find a starter. Where you go find a guy, I don't know. Like, you're just going to have to roll with the guys you got, is what I think in terms of goaltending.
What are you going to have 15 million tied up in goalies? Like, you just can't do it. I think Jack Campbell's a good goaltender. I really, really do. I think the things that make him good may also be the things that he might get exposed on. Like, he's not John Sebastian Jaguar. Like, he's not going to stop and drop and block the shot perfectly, right? He's an athletic Curtis Joseph type goalie, which means he's going to let in some bad ones, but it also means he's going to stop some that he shouldn't stop. So it depends how comfortable you are with that. I take him over Frederik Andersen any day still. And Freddie lets in that backbreaker goal that he's squared up on. I don't think Campbell, I know the numbers aren't on his side. I know they're not. And he's had some bad goals against. But I think he's got the mental constitution to when it's go time, I think he'll be there. I have that faith in him. But again, I don't have any numbers to back that up. It's just what I've seen as somebody who's been around the game for a long time. He's a competitor. And I don't think, it's hard to come by that. Like, Marc-Andre Fleury is a competitor too. Now, he had a bad playoff last year, but would I still use him? Absolutely. Any day of the week.
Well, and guys that win Stanley Cups, like proven Stanley Cup winners. I know his Stanley Cups because Murray came in there. I know his Stanley Cups weren't as recent, but I think you get a Stanley Cup winner in there and it's a different story, like in terms of the Flurries. One last thing I want to ask you about, and I saw Borny was talking about this on his show, or actually it was on JD's show, I think. And they were talking about obviously how good Matthews has been, 43 or something goals now. He's kind of taking over that Rocket race. People are talking Hart Trophy. I mean, of course, it's the noise, and it's all going to be like that. He's been amazing.
Yeah.
But what he was talking about was, and something that I've been thinking about for a little while now is there, like, he thinks, and I agree, that Matthews needs the C before his contract runs out, or he could be out of town. I thought they should have gave it to him because I think Tavares could have handled it. He was already signed for the $7 million. I think Tavares would have been fine being an A, but then you give Tavares the C, and now you're in a situation where if Matthews doesn't get the C by the end of his run here, he can just leave. He's a UFA. He's gone. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Stripping, because now you'd have to strip Tavares and you'd have to give it to Matthews. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think you're right. I think Tavares on his last contract coming in, he was already not going to be the number one center. I think an A would have been fine by him. He doesn't strike me as the type to be like, I need the C or I'm going to pout. Plus, he's getting $11 million. Yeah. So I've actually had this conversation with Bourne before. I think, and it'd be an unpopular opinion, of the four big guys, if I wanted to move a guy, it would be Tavares. Like, just purely financially. Like, if you had him at $6 million, lovely. You had something like that. 11 just makes it really difficult for Kyle Dubas. But to answer your question, it depends what Austin Matthews' motivations are. Some guys don't want to be the captain, right? Has he gone in and expressed the desire to be the captain to Sheldon Keefe and Kyle Dubas? I don't know. I have no idea. Everyone seems to be like, oh, he's got to be your captain. Well, maybe he's not. Maybe he's not the leader of the guys in the room. Like, he might be. I have no idea. I think these are the questions you have to ask. Like, if they're down and out after the second period, is Austin Matthews the guy that's being the leader? We all know he leads by example, which does go a long way. Or do you want that measured, calm, I've got an Olympic gold medal? Actually, I don't know if Tavares does because he's been hurt. But I've played it all. I've got a lot of experience in the league. Who do you want there? And that varies by dressing room to dressing room. I know it's easy to say, give him the C, give him the C, give him the C. And I don't even think Tavares would care. Like, if they said, hey, we're going to make Austin the captain, I don't think he'd care.
And I think what his argument was is they're already pushing Matthews in front of the camera more. Like, he's always the guy you see the post game and whatever intermission. Like, you always got the sound clips of him and stuff. And I think what he's already saying is like, well, they're already pushing him as if he is the captain, as if he is, which, I mean, he's been amazing this season, play-wise, obviously. But like you said, yeah, it will come down to what happens in the dressing room. I hate seeing a guy get stripped of a letter that he was given, especially by like pretty much the same group. I know it's not exactly the same group because the Babcocks and stuff of the world was still there, but I hate seeing that. I hated when they took it away from Thornton and gave it to maybe they gave
Joe
it to
Pavelski, I think.
Pavelski at the time. I didn't love that, but guys do get older, and if you got to keep, even though they didn't even keep Pavelski around, you got to keep a Matthews around. If that's what it took, I think I would do it in a heartbeat. If Matthews says, okay, I'm staying on, I just want the letter, fine.
If that's what he says, that's one thing. I think it's overrated. I think that, how can I best put this? I think the fact that after Dion Phaneuf left, they waited so long to name a captain was ridiculous. Oh, we have 4 A's. Well, I guarantee you one of those A's in the dressing room is the captain. So get the optics or whatever. I think that was another power move by Mike Babcock, right? So I don't know. It depends how important it is, I guess, is the ultimate answer to my question. How important is it to Austin Matthews? Does he care? Does he want to be the captain? There's guys that have been like, I don't want to be the captain. I don't want that extra responsibility. So yeah, I mean, I'd have to know more about the situation. I don't think it would shock anyone. I think if they were to do it, it would be like hey, John, we'd like you to come out and say, I'm relinquishing this. I don't think it would be, the guys going in and be like, all right, John, you're not the captain. Austin's the captain. It would be, Tavares like, no, I think Austin's the leader of this team. I want him to do it. That's the only way that flies.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I think that a lot of what they're talking about too is business decision, because you just don't want to lose the Austin Matthews of the world.
If he's gonna leave you because of that, come on.
Yeah, you're right.
That's not captain-like behavior.
Yeah, you're right. All right. I know you got to get going here.
I do.
So we'll wrap up here. I'm just going to tell everyone, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, please subscribe. Go to YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube page, get notifications every time we send out a podcast weekly. It'll be P. Greggy and Kris next week. I don't know what they got planned. I'm going to be out of town, but we'll be back in a couple weeks with the full crew. Till next time, this has been the Coolbet Canada podcast. And as always, stay cool.